When the HOA president rolled heavy machinery up my mountain trail, thinking she could erase my cabin for violating community standards, she didn't expect I'd been recording everything, and that I had a lawyer for a brother. One court order later, her machines froze, her accounts drained, and her empire collapsed. The morning it happened was supposed to be quiet, just me, my coffee, and the sound of lake water brushing against the rocks below my cabin. That peace shattered the moment I heard the roar of diesel engines echoing through the Pine Valley. I stepped out onto my porch, mug in hand, to see a yellow bulldozer crawling up the dirt trail toward my gate. Behind it were two pickup trucks with Lakeside Property Association logos on the doors. At the front of the convoy stood Karen Whitmore, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, sunglasses, clipboard, and the smug confidence of someone who thought rules only applied to others. "Morning. Ms. Whitmore," I called out, keeping my voice even. "Something I can help you with?" She smiled, the kind of smile people use right before they ruin your day. "Mr. Carter," she said, "your cabin violates multiple community code standards. You've built an unapproved fence and unlicensed dock, and that solar setup is visible from the lake. We're reclaiming this section until it's brought to compliance." I stared at her. "You're going to reclaim my private land?" Her grin sharpened. "Your former land." "The HOA board voted last night to clear non-compliant structures. You were notified," she pointed to her clipboard. "Page 3, Notice of Demolition." I walked over, read the paper, and almost laughed. It wasn't a legal notice. It was a printed email from the HOA's internal mailing list with no signatures, no county permit, no court order. Just arrogance on letterhead. "Ma'am," I said slowly, "that's not how property law works. You can't bulldoze private land because you don't like how it looks." She snapped her fingers at the driver. "Do it." The bulldozer's engine revved, metal teeth biting into the gravel. My fence splintered. My heart pounded, but I forced myself not to shout. Instead, I took my phone, hit record, and panned across the scene. HOA trucks, workers. "Karen giving orders. Every second of it." "Karen," I said quietly, "you just made the biggest mistake of your career." That night, I sat at my table surrounded by files. I wasn't a lawyer, but my brother Mark sure was. Former JAG attorney, sharp as barbed wire, he answered on the first ring. "Luke, it's been a while. What's wrong?" "They tried to bulldoze my cabin," silence on the other end. Then a low whistle. "You record it?" "Every second." "Perfect. Then tomorrow you're not calling the police. You're filing an injunction." By dawn, we had it drafted. A court order freezing any further HOA actions until ownership disputes were resolved. Mark loaded the evidence, the video, the fake notice, and the witness statements I'd gathered from two nearby property owners who'd seen the incident. When I showed up to the county clerk's office, Karen was already there, arguing with a staffer. Her voice carried across the hall. "I don't care if it's private property. The board has authority over the visual integrity of the lakefront." Then she saw me and the thick envelope in my hand. "What's that?" she demanded. "An injunction," I said, sliding it across the counter. "Signed by Judge McAllister, effective immediately. It freezes all HOA operations related to private property enforcement until further review." Her face drained of color. What does that mean?" she stammered. "It means," I said, "that bulldozer you parked by my fence, it's not moving. Your trucks? They're staying put. And if anyone touches that land again, it's contempt of court." I'll never forget the look she gave me, a mix of disbelief and fury, like she'd just realized the prey she thought was cornered had teeth. Within 2 days, the sheriff's department delivered notice to the entire HOA board. All operations were suspended. Their accounts were frozen for review. The county's property office flagged every non-compliance complaint they'd ever filed. Turns out Karen had been charging enforcement fees to homeowners, funneling thousands into an account under her husband's name. Mark dug deeper, and soon the DA's office was asking for copies of our footage. By week's end, the HOA president who'd tried to bulldoze my home was standing in a courtroom, not as an authority figure, but as a defendant. It took 6 weeks for the investigation to wrap up. In that time, the HOA crumbled. The injunction became permanent after a civil judge found the board had grossly exceeded its legal authority. Homeowners started calling me, not to complain, but to thank me. Turns out I wasn't the only one they'd bullied. "I got fined for planting the wrong color flowers," one woman said. They threatened to tow my truck off my driveway, another man added. Karen had ruled the neighborhood like a feudal queen, using fear and fake paperwork. Now she stood in court, pale and shaking, as the judge read the findings. Defendant is ordered to cease all HOA-related activities pending restitution to affected homeowners. When it was over, I stepped outside, the sun warm on my face. Mark met me on the courthouse steps. You know, he said, you just dismantled an entire HOA with one injunction. I smiled. Guess it's true what they say. Paperwork beats power tools. We drove back to the lake that evening. The bulldozer was still there, parked exactly where the court had frozen it. Rust already crawled across the blade. I could have ordered it to be removed, but instead, I left it there as a monument, a reminder that arrogance, no matter how loud it roars, always stalls when it meets the law. As the sun dipped behind the water, the lake was quiet again, just the sound of the wind and a single man's laughter echoing off the shore. My cabin still stood. A year later, the HOA was replaced by a voluntary association, one that actually helped people instead of harassing them. Karen moved out of state, and me? I added a brass plaque to the cabin gate that reads, "Protected by law," and a lawyer brother. Every time I pass it, I can't help but grin.